Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about Seth and what his name means and everything related to him as we did Adam. And if you need a review of Adam, Adam was born in year 0, and 0 represents AC, which is after creation, and Adam could also be tied to be uh, well, the definition of Adam is tied to earth, red, blood, ground. Those are the definitions. And then you can also look at what happened in 0 AD, and Adam was considered to be Jesus in 0 AD. Like, AD stands for after death, and whose death are we talking about? Jesus. And he's considered to be the second Adam. First Adam was to be the person who was to bring sin into the world, and Jesus is the one to eliminate sin, the one who takes all the sin upon his shoulders and removes it and brings about forgiveness. And then when you go back and look at Adam's death, Adam was dead in the year 930. If you look at 930 BC, that's when Bethlehem became a city, tied directly to Jesus, Jesus' birthplace. And Bethlehem was born through the king Rehoboam, which is a direct descendant of Solomon and King David. So it's sticking with the line of Jesus. That's also the year that the Israel nation and the Judea nation split due to people not wanting to follow Rehoboam because he was too strict. He had said that he would do scorpions instead of whipping and lashing for people who do misdeeds and stuff, and basically they didn't like his offer, but it was foretold that that's what would happen, is a splitting of the Judea and Israel. But anyway, uh, moving on, we now have Seth. Seth's name, as you can see, is appointed or replacement. And that's a key word here, replacement. If you think about the end times, we're told that there's an appointed one to come, also known as the Antichrist. And replacement, the one who stands in place of Christ. That's another way of looking at it. And what's another word that means the one who stands in place of Christ? This man is known as the Vicar of Christ. Who's known as the Vicar of Christ? The Pope, which is why we see the Pope as one of the Antichrists in the Bible. He's known as the false prophet by most people. And yes, there is more than one. There's supposed to be 3. There's the beast, there's the false prophet, and then there's the dragon. So, going back, if you wonder how Seth can represent a replacement, Seth was Eve's replacement for Abel, who was killed by Cain. He was appointed to Eve, and that's why he was named Seth. Now let's move on. Seth was born in 130 AC, so let's look at other years that are in direct correlation. Since Adam was born in 0, and then If we were to continue the timeline and say Seth was birthed from Adam, so what came after Jesus on the AD line? Well, in 130 AD is what we're going to look at, since that directly ties into 130 AC, and see how they're connected, seeing if something exactly the same can happen just because it has the same exact number, and let's see if there's something related to appointment and replacement. So in 130 AD, you have Simon Bar Kochba. He is considered to be a replacement Messiah. Because of him attacking Rome, he ends up getting Palestine devastated, and no Jews from that point on are allowed in Jerusalem or Judea. And due to this event, Christians inherit Jerusalem. Yeah, it's pretty direct. And I can read you a little bit about Simon Kochba directly. Sorry, I'm not going to bring you to American Idol here. So let's see. And 130 AD. Give me a few seconds to find my page so I can read it to you. Alright, so for 2 generations, this is also known as the Last Jewish Rebellion. For 2 generations, an uneasy truce prevails between the Jews and the Roman conquerors. Although there is no temple in Jerusalem and the city has been largely destroyed, the Jews continue to worship freely in their synagogues. But any suggestion of calm is shattered after the Emperor Hadrian, visiting Jerusalem in AD 130, decides to rebuild it as a Roman city. Replacement city. Alright. It is to be called Aelia Capitolina, echoing the Capitoline Hill in Rome. Most offensive of all is the emperor's plan for Jerusalem's most prominent hill, the Temple Mount. On the ruined Temple Mount there is to be a shrine to Jupiter, in which Hadrian himself would be honored. Jewish opposition to this sacrilege is led by Simon Bar Kochba, calling himself the Prince of Israel. Simon's prestige increases dramatically when a leading rabbi recognizes him as the Messiah. Replacement. What happens when you get a replacement and not the real deal? Well, let's find out. In 132, his Jewish forces defeat a Roman legion and capture Jerusalem. Not till 135, after a large army has been sent to regain control, is Jerusalem recovered by the Romans. In a bitter campaign fought village by village throughout the region, 500,000 lives are lost. The whole area of Palestine is devastated. Aelia Capitolina becomes, for the moment, an unimportant provincial town. In the reprisals after Simon Bar Kochba's revolt, the Jews are forbidden to set foot in Jerusalem. They even seem to have been expelled from the surrounding region of Judea. Only further north in Galilee do they retain a presence within their ancient kingdom of Israel. That's what comes when you try to do a false Messiah. And it's supposed to happen again. Yep, that's right. This is only 130 AD when this happened. Now, you'll notice I have 1042 BC and 1042 AD here. 1042 is the year that Seth passed away. So let's see how 1042 ties in to the appointed replacement. 1042 BC, Saul becomes Israel's king. And if you need to know anything about Saul and what happened during his reign, you can read 1 Samuel 8 through 14. Then, 1042 AD, Edward the Confessor. Edward the Confessor was also considered a replacement. So let's look at see how he came in to be a replacement. Edward the Confessor was king of England from 1042 to 1066. Edward's death was to transform medieval England and led to the reign of Norman William the Conqueror, with all that his rule meant to medieval England: castles, the Doomsday Book, and feudalism. It was in 1040 AD that Edward was recalled to England by his half-brother Hardicanute, who had succeeded Ethelred in the same year. Hardicanute died after a drinking party in 1042, and Edward became king of England. Replacement king. Replacement. Now, let's look at something else. If we continue down in my list, King Edward the Confessor was also considered to be a very religious person. And during his reign, he had two different prophecies, both related to the end of his empire. Give me a second, I'm still working. But it wasn't just him that was important in this particular year, but there was also a group known as the Fatimids, who also can be considered to be important to this anointed ones, the replacement. In Daniel 11, chapters 7 through 8, it says, "One from her family line will arise to take her place. He will attack the forces of the king of the north and enter his fortress. He will fight against them and be victorious. He will also seize their god, their metal images, and their valuable articles of silver and gold, and carry them off to Egypt. For some years he will leave the king of the north alone." This is very distinctive of the Fatimid Caliphate. They built the Egyptian city of Cairo and made it their capital in 969 AD. They also derived their name from Muhammad's daughter, and the verse clearly indicates that the leader's ancestry was traced to a female, which is unusual. And as I said, Fatimid died a few months after resisting Abu Bakr's takeover following her father's death. Later, her husband and both sons were murdered. It is fitting that someone from her family line arise to take her place. Replacement. Appointed one. The Fatimids were Ismaili Shiites. That sound familiar? You've been hearing about them all over the news. Which is the second largest sect behind the Twelver Shiites. The two groups split because they disagreed on the rightful sixth Imam, Ismail or his younger brother. Regardless, the Fatimids attacked the north and took control of the southern half of the empire. They entered his fortress because a rebel general converted to Shiite and declared Fatimid rule in Baghdad for over a year. It is likely that the valuable articles were seized and taken to Egypt during that time. The advancements stopped at that point, but the Fatimids ruled the southern empire from Cairo for more than 2 centuries, from 909 to 1171, and they reached their peak around 1040, which is when they controlled Egypt, North Africa, Palestine, Syria, Lebanon, and Sicily. And as the empire declined, Turkish invaders took Syria and Christian crusaders took Palestine. And that's how it goes from there. And in 1056 is whenever Edward the Confessor has his dream. And he says, "I saw," said he, "most wonderful things, and therefore did I laugh without cause," because he laughed during a little feast that they were having during a solemn moment at dinner, and everybody was confused as to why he was laughing, so he told 3 people who came by to check on him. And they, as his customary with men, became therefore the more anxious to learn the occasion of his mirth. So, after musing for some time, he told them. He said that 7 sleepers had rested during 200 years on Mount Silius, lying always thereto on their right side, but that in the very moment of his laughter they turned themselves over to their left sides, in which the posture they should continue asleep for another 74 years, being a dire omen of future misery to mankind. Ooh, he's prophesying the end of times for their country. And for all those things which our Savior had foretold to his disciples that were to be fulfilled about the end of the world should come to pass within those 74 years, that nation should rise up against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there would be in many places earthquakes, pestilence, and famine, and terrible apparitions in the heavens, and great signs with great alterations of dominion, wars of the infidels against the Christians, and victories gained by the Christians over the unbelievers. All this was to happen within the 74 years. Within those 74 years. So, in other words, within means like within the next 74 years, all this is going to happen. And as they wondered at these things, the king explained to them the passion of the 7 sleepers with a shape and a proportion of each of their bodies. And none of this was wrote down, apparently. And then, in consequence to this discourse, the earl sent people to the Emperor of Constantinople, Manish, carrying letters and presents, and then the king received them and commanded him to admit the English ambassadors to see the 7 sleepers. And then it came to pass that the prophetic vision of King Edward was approved by all Greeks. So everybody was approving of this man's testimony as if he was the foreseer of the end of days, and he was absolutely correct, had no fallacy. Not saying that the stuff didn't immediately start happening, but yeah, he didn't get it exactly right. But they saw him as a prophet, a replacement. And that's how all these people are tied into the name Seth. And I hope that this was educational for you, and it gives you something to think about with biblical names and their meanings and biblical dates and how they can be tied to other dates. Because every one of these things happened, and they happened on the dates written in Genesis chapter 5. Yeah. I think it's chapter 5. Let me check right quick, make sure I'm not giving you a runaround. Yeah, Genesis chapter 5, where it has the generations of Adam. He's the very first one after Adam, so you can't miss him. And you can look up all of these things and verify what I've said. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and continue on whenever we go over, let's see who's next in the list. Let's see, Enos, E-N-O-S. That's who's next. I look forward to introducing him next. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and have a wonderful day.